Hey, what's going on, everybody? And this is a special Friday edition of Super Deformed Gamescast, and we, as the title suggests, are going to be talking about Wolfenstein 2. If you're not ready for spoilers, this is not the podcast for you. I advise you close the browser if you haven't beat it yet, because we're going to be getting into the talking about the end game, talking about major story beats, character motivations, and a lot more. So again, if you have not finished Wolfenstein 2. I suggest you leave if you have, or if you haven't finished it and you just don't care about spoilers, and stick around and hear us talk about killing some Nazis. Anyway, I just want to point out, by the way, that anybody who says that SDGC is a biased Sony podcast, look at who we have on this on the Spoilercast tonight. Like, you could not get more Xbox centric than what we got going on right here. We got Anchorman from the Multiverse podcast, who's a big Xbox guy. Dude, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely, my man. And then we've got our old friend, Randall Pony 19, the man of the million. Dude, you are the Xbox guy, and you're an old friend of the show, and I'm always happy. It's been too long since you've been on here, man.
Yeah, but I'm a huge PlayStation guy now, according to everybody.
I've heard, man, depending on which way the wind is blowing. And of course, we have our good friend Zach, newest member of the podcast, who is also a big Xbox player. Zach, thanks for hopping on and talking some Nazi killing with us, bud.
Yeah, of course.
I know, and I know especially you. I mean, all of you guys have got a lot to say about Wolfenstein 2. Anchorman, especially, I know, has been dying to talk about this for about a month.
Oh yeah.
So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Obviously, Wolfenstein 2 came out in late October. Sequel to Wolfenstein: The New Order, and the game itself picks up right after the ending of the first game, when you've killed Death's Head, and BJ's just lying there with his guts spilling out all over the floor. And the game itself opens up in a manner that I have. So, like, the game starts and BJ's in a fucking wheelchair. And that threw me for a loop. I was like, I don't think we've ever seen a protagonist, especially like a very masculine protagonist like BJ, with that level of vulnerability before. And it's something I wasn't expecting. And I wanted to just throw it at all you guys. Like, what was your reaction to that? Realizing that you're gunning down Nazis in a fucking wheelchair.
I mean, part of it was like I knew that part because they had shown that a lot in a lot of the demos in the previous.
See,
stuff.
I didn't. I went in blind.
Yeah, I most of the time I try to go in blind, but this was the one game I couldn't do that with. So it was. So I knew it was coming, but I thought it was definitely an interesting take on it. Like, you really start to value your mobility. Yep. It shows you how it shows you how vulnerable you are. Like, I like it because on a technical level, it kind of gets you used to your healing system at the whole pick up and play. It makes you move slow to figure it out, and you realize, okay, cover's important. And
I thought it was a little ridiculous to be doing stealth kills with Nazis in a wheelchair, But then again, like, I think what got to me is that, like, right from get-go, like, I mean, the game opens and Set Roth is cutting parts of BJ's intestines out, and I was like, how does he come back? Like, how do you come back from this? Like, how do you, like, what kind of character? Because I didn't realize he was going to put on that robot suit.
Right, and we should probably get into how he got in that robot suit too.
Go ahead, yeah, please.
So ultimately, so when you wake up in the wheelchair, you are on what the game calls the Avis Hammer. It's a German U-boat that the Kreisau Circle, your allies, took over, and you're currently under attack from the antagonist from the first game. Frau Engel.
Engel, yeah.
And she's attacking you with this giant floating ship called the Ausmercer, which is basically, think Avengers. I think the first Avengers movie, they had the big floating ship. It's a lot like that.
That's a good parallel.
Yeah, the helicarrier.
Yes, it's a helicarrier. And basically, she captures either Wyatt or Fergus, depending on who you chose to save, just like in the first game. And she also captures your mentor, Carolyn. And so the only way you can get them is basically to surrender and board her ship. And she tells you, of course, she's going to let them go because she thinks that you're gullible, and you are. You think that they're going to let her go, and you get on the ship, and little do you know, she's there to kill you and your friends. And so in this scene, rather quickly, she beheads Carolyn, your mentor, in front of you. Belittles her.
do you mind if I cut in real quick, Zach?
Absolutely, yeah.
I just want to point out, like, the way Carolyn's death was depicted was so, like, when Frau Engel cuts her head off, and then she picks up Carolyn's severed head and starts shoving her face, making you kiss it.
So bad.
Oh, and then Sigrun, her daughter, is complaining, and she's like starts shoving Carolyn's head into her crotch and saying, "You want kisses down there?" And I was just like, Jesus Christ, this woman, like, holy fuck. Like,
she's just very, like, comic book
great antagonist. Like, that was the thing. Like, I can't remember, like, a character like that we've had since, Voss in Far Cry 3, where you feel like you're despised, like, you just hate them, like, like, severely loathe them. And that was great.
Yeah, but that's what makes her a good villain, though.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to like her, right? John, you said that you didn't know that he was going to end up in the suit. I mean, it was all in, like, the pre-marketing stuff.
No,
like
dude,
trailers.
Dude, I mean, I went in blind. Like I went into, like, I didn't know he was going to be in the wheelchair. I suspected he might have some kind of, like, exosuit augmentation, but I didn't know Carolyn was going to die, and I didn't figure that he was actually going to take over that suit.
I mean, just from the E3 trailer when they originally debuted the game, which I know you were watching.
I was.
I mean, he's in the suit because he goes up to the resistance and that the thing covers his head because they're about to.
Oh, okay.
So
I must have missed that then.
From the beginning, I was like, I knew Carolyn was dead because he has to get in the suit, right? And she's old, and I think it was a good choice. A lot of people didn't understand why BJ is so somber in the beginning. Right, he's not really like himself because Caroline dies. And a lot of people don't realize was that Caroline was his only connection to his previous life, and even to the previous games, like the older Wolfenstein ones. A lot of people don't realize that, like Wolfenstein 2009, she's like the only character that kind of like crossed over between the series. So like he's upset, but a lot of people kind of just rediscovered Wolfenstein this gen. So they're like, well, why is BJ acting all down? It's like, oh, because he just lost one of the persons that he's been with and fighting for a long time,
Absolutely. Well, and on top of that, right, like Carolyn is, I mean, BJ is clearly the brawn of the group, but she, in a lot of ways, looking at the last game, is the brains of the Kreisau Circle, along with Set Roth. And also, obviously, he's wearing, I mean, effectively, he's wearing her clothes, right? So he's wearing his mentor's clothes.
Her wings, basically.
Yeah, that's what he calls it. His body is failing him. I mean, it's such a human moment. I mean, it's a little ham-fisted. There's some sequences where you're looking for, getting back to like the plot progression, basically, you're looking for Nazis hidden in your boat who must be sending your signal off to Frau Engel. So you're searching the ship, and while you're killing off these Nazis who are starved hiding in your U-boat, there's this inner monologue he's having about how he feels like he's dying, and he's very upset because his significant other, Anya, is pregnant with twins. He's upset he's not going to be there for them growing up. And so he's just having this monologue about, Carolyn, lend me your strength. I don't want to show Anya that I'm dying. I don't want her to know I've only got a few weeks left. And it comes off a bit strong. It's a bit much, but I think it works in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the whole the themes behind it too, because like at the beginning of the game, you're physically broken. Yeah. Like that's why you're in the wheelchair and all that kind of thing. And so when you get the armor, it kind of shows BJ on a level where he's emotionally broken at that point. Right. Where he doesn't want to talk to Anya. He doesn't want to open up about anything. He's just doing his work to stay in the boat and show that he's busy. But at the same time, it's like while he's physically strong, at least in this case, he's emotionally damaged. Right. And I loved that aspect of the game because they show it and it's subtle and it works on so many levels. And especially when he gets his new body, it's like a symbol. It's a symbol of him being a new man, literally.
Oh, we're gonna
having a new purpose in life.
We're gonna get into him getting his new body. I want to. When you're talking about like his somber attitude and like the things he's left in the past, like you've got to talk about Brian Bloom's amazing voice performance as BJ, and not just his voice performance, but the script that he has given. And I love how the beginning of the game is sort of bookended with the beginning of the New Order when they're storming Deathside Castle in the very beginning, and he says, "Death at the gates, howl my name. Can't greet you today. I got a war to win." And then in this one, at the very beginning of the game, when he's on that helicopter, he says, "Death at the gates again, howl my name. Come on in, old buddy. Sorry, I kept you waiting." I was like, oh God, like, oh, it just the tone and the delivery was just pitch perfect, and it harkened back to that. Like I said, it bookended those two scenes so wonderfully that, and I almost got the sense that part of BJ's somberness after that was disappointment that he didn't die.
I mean, yeah, and I think that's a lot of it, is that everybody in the Christ Circle in the second game, especially early on, is just tired and defeated, right? Because, I mean, if you look at what at the end of the last game, you take out Death's Head and you think it's going to be this huge winning blow, and when this game starts up, it's clear that, like, sure, maybe it slowed him down, but it didn't do much.
Not at all.
But just one quick thing I want to touch on, and why I think that performance is so strong and the script is so strong, is one of the things that BJ is having in his inner monologue is he's like, I just can't let Anya know I'm dying. And then you go up and you talk with her, and then just immediately it just spills out of him that, like, he's like, I'm dying. And, like, I love it because it is so much a human relationship interaction where you're, like, upset about something, but you don't want to let someone know you're upset about something. So in your head, you're like, I'm just not going to let them know. And then, of course, you spill your guts out, and then everybody's upset. And, like, it was so human. And I think that's kind of what prevented it from getting kind of corny with those inner monologue sequences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I want to point out that, I mean, this is like, these are story beats and human moments and emotions in a fucking Wolfenstein game, which blows me away, because when the New Order, that's what got me, right? Like when the New Order came out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna run around and blow some Nazis away, and it's gonna be a good time. I was not expecting the very, very relatable and human characterization that they gave to BJ Blazkowicz. And I gotta tell you, that moment when he tells himself, I've just got to push myself away from Anya. Like, as somebody who has battled depression his entire life and battled anxiety, like, that really resonated with me because I have pushed away people that love me, and so I understand from BJ's point of view what that feels like, and what it feels like to think that you can't open yourself up to somebody, that you've got to protect them from a very, very dark and painful truth. And that, I was just, the whole first half of that game was story wise just so perfectly paced.
Yep.
It's just unbelievable. Rand, go ahead, man.
I think the most surprising thing about Wolfenstein 2, and honestly the best thing, the thing that elevated the game above the previous one, and most of the games this year for me, because it's currently sitting at my game of the year, was I was not expecting the immediate flashback to the family stuff between his mom and his dad. I can't believe
we skipped that. Yeah,
I know. Like that's the like, I know I love his relationship with Anya, right? It's so pure. But like the game to me was, I'm like you, John. I'm ready to kill some Nazis, right? And I get this scene at the beginning with a mother concerned for her son, with clearly a racist father. You have the N-word dropped immediately, and I'm
that one took through me. I was not expecting that.
So I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, all right. So, and I said in my review that I felt BJ Blazkowicz, because of this game, is now the most fleshed out protagonist in a first-person shooter. And honestly, my favorite. He's flawed, but you understand his reasons and motivation. You understand why he's fighting the Nazis so hard as he is, and they're monsters because, well, his father was a monster, right? Yeah. So that scene, now, the beginning of the game, I thought dragged a little bit. I actually hated the New York level. I thought it looked bad. I thought it played bad. I was like, man, they screwed this game up, right? But then you go to Area 51. You walk down the town with the Nazis controlling it. I'm like, okay, this is good. So this is good. I love the lawyer guy and his crazy. It's aliens,
super
right?
Super special, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then you go to Area 51, but it's the scene when you go to the house.
Yep.
That solidified the game for me. That scene where you go to the house and it's dilapidated and you have those flashbacks to when you're a kid and you're thinking to yourself, this would be a good time for his dad to show up, right? But then you're like, nah, the house is in ruins, it's in disrepair. He's not there. He grabs the ring, right? And you're like, okay, and then there's his dad. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then the game just doesn't stop from that moment on. From Area 51 on until the end of the game, I was in heaven.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
But what killed me about that scene? I just want to make this one point real quick, Zach. What killed me about the scene with his father in the house was a line that his dad said. I can't remember his father's name. I think it was like Arthur or something like that, Arthur Blaskovitz or something like that. But his dad says a line where he says, "This is a white man's world. White man's got to keep it Christian.
Got to keep it Christian."
And it, not to get too political, but it just, that was the most 2017 in America line I've heard in a game ever. Like I mean, what a topical and relevant game for the kind of the dark times we're living in.
Well, and I think one of the things that makes that line resonate so much more, right, is that in that same sequence they reveal that BJ's Jewish mother was turned in by his father, right?
Oh my God, that made me livid.
Yeah,
I was livid.
So
I was like, you piece of shit.
Oh God! And
but so really quick, and Rand, you were right to jump into this point because it's one of the strongest in the game. But I really want to wind back how we got to Roswell.
Okay, let's do it.
Because we jumped over a character that I love. So the New York level, which Rand is absolutely right, is not a strong level from a gameplay perspective. But you meet two very interesting people, as we mentioned, super special. But more interestingly is Grace Walker. And Grace Walker is leading the New York resistance movement. She is obviously it's alternate future, but she's the equivalent of the Black Panthers. And she's a survivor of when New York City was hit with an atom bomb by the Nazis. And so she joins you, and she, to me, one of the reasons I found her so compelling as a character was because she's the first character to say to BJ, you're fighting for the right reasons, but you forget that the American people are part of the reason, the country looks the way it does, that Americans were oppressing people that looked like me way back before you were worried about Nazis in America. And she just I think she's the first person to make BJ really aware of his whiteness and the kind of privilege he faced at home. And there's one point where BJ kind of concedes, and he says, I think you're right. And the super special is in the background. He's like, Grace is always right.
Grace is I remember that.
But basically, I mean, and so Grace quickly, when she ends up joining you, she comes back to your ship, and she quickly, without any sort of debate about it, she takes over Carolyn's room, which is obviously just supposed to be pointing out, hey, she's taking over as kind of the leader, the brains of the organization. And a lot of people are still grieving over her death, which is...
It's very quick.
It's very quick. Wow. It's very quick. Yeah, you can do it all so fast. And one of the things that she points out right away is she's like, there are nukes on this boat, right? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, why aren't you using them? And so there's just this moment where Grace is like, all Grace has to do is like tell them they need to do something, and then something clicks, and they're like, oh yeah, we should do that. And so the reason they go to Roswell is they take a nuke out of storage on their ship, and they're going to Roswell. They're going to set it off basically at a massive Nazi operation hidden under Roswell in Area 51.
And I'll tell you what, man, like that whole Roswell scene, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show The Man in the High Castle, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
That I got some serious Man in the High Castle vibes from that scene, because you're walking around what appears on the outside is a very, very rural 1960s Americana town, but there's just Nazi paraphernalia everywhere. And I was like, man, like that to me actually was the most vivid, startling part of the game, because you're walking past Americans casually talking about slavery, about how I bought some slaves. And that to me was like I remember walking past one of the NPCs, and they were talking about, oh, we're going to the slave market or something like that. I was like, I was just like, oh Jesus. Like, it was so casual and so matter of fact. And I think that's what got me, is that really scary vision of what America could have been.
Yep.
And it just kudos to Bethesda for, you can fault Bethesda for a lot of things. You can fault them for marketing the game in a shitty manner, which they did. You could fault them for releasing it at a terrible time, which they did. But one thing you cannot fault them for is for not shying away from extremely difficult to consume content. Because they could have taken the easy way out.
Yep.
And just made this a very unnuanced, simple battle between good and evil. But what they did is they offered a very uncomfortable window into white America, and it gets you thinking, like, were we to be taken over by an oppressor with fundamental or with beliefs like the Nazis, what population of what portion of the population would roll over and just accept their new overlords and say this is the new normal?
And they kind of touch on that, right? When you first get to Roswell, so you can sprint through all of this if you feel like just getting to the gameplay sections. But there's one little dialogue piece that I really love where you're walking and there's two people. It's broad daylight walking around in Klansman garb, which is in its own right upsetting. And they're chatting back and forth, thick Southern accents, and suddenly a Nazi officer approaches them from behind.
I know what you're
small talk, and. It's kind of interesting, right? Because at first the Klansmen want to talk to the German officer like they're equivalents, right? Like they're both men in power.
We're both the white man.
Right, but very quickly the officer puts them in place and makes them feel very stupid because they're not pronouncing their German words properly. And I think that a lot of it reminds me of when you hear and read about this idea of these people who are white supremacists today, but they're poorly educated and have these very backwards thoughts, but they're just not smart enough, but they think that they're better than everyone else.
Yep.
But it was just an interesting way to look at it. Like you're saying, John, it wasn't black and white. It was, there's a bureaucracy and a hierarchy to basically white supremacy in America and Nazi occupation in America. But no, Roswell, like BioShock Infinite, is just one of those scenes that in some ways you want to be kind of taken in by like this 1950s aesthetics, right? Like American Joe's Diner or All American Diner.
Yep.
You want to get into it, but then you have to remember, okay, this is horrifying, right? It's the same way that BioShock Infinite, when you first get to that world, like it almost takes you in because it's like, you know what I mean? It's so American, but then you remember, wait a minute, but what's holding this up, right? Which is like,
I think the difference there is that when you're playing BioShock Infinite for the first time and you make it to Columbia and you're walking around Comstock Square, you don't really know what Columbia is all about. So it's a very appealing aesthetic. I was like, oh, this is a place, like, this looks amazing. Like, I could live here up in the clouds, beautiful. Then you realize what's at the dark center of Columbia, and you're like, oh, never mind. This place is evil. Like, as opposed to Roswell, right from get-go, when you walk there, you're like, okay, I know what this place is about. And to me, the most jarring thing, the scariest thing, was just seeing American citizens going about their daily lives as if nothing happened. I mean, and like Zach said, you could rush through all this and get to the gameplay, no problem. But especially the Roswell level, you're doing yourself a disservice because, you'll miss conversations like an American mother saying, Billy is joining the Wehrmacht, and I am just so proud. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my Lord. It was just, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
There was one particular one I remember listening all the way through till, at least on the Roswell mission, one little dialogue tree, where there's the young girl, and she's basically just kind of trying to sweet talk and getting good with this commando.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And she just keeps talking and keeps talking. You're like, oh my god, this tripe. And you just listen to it over and over and over again. It's like, oh my god, this is so bad. And then listening to one part where she screws up and she's like, oh well, what do you guys think about people from Austria? They're like of lesser German blood.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then just listen to the commander's like, my mother's Austrian and the Führer's from Austria. You better watch it. I'm reporting you.
Yeah, I remember that.
But anyway, like, from a narrative perspective, it's a really interesting place, and I think this is what makes this game so great is, and there's a lot of these discussions throughout the game where, like, there are little dialogue pieces that, like, elevate the storytelling, elevate the world that you could totally miss. And so if you sprint through them, shame on you. But it's something that really brings you in. But like Rand was saying a few minutes ago, so you're in Roswell. You go into basically an underground bunker full of Nazi commanders. You set off this nuclear bomb, and like Rand was saying, you decide on the way out after escaping the blast, you're going to go home. And like Rand said, you do meet up with your father, but before you go meet up with your father, there's a couple optional flashback sequences. Did all of you guys take those in?
You talk about the ones with the little African American girl, Billy.
Billy, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Other Billy.
Yeah.
You know what's most jarring about Billy to me is like watching all those scenes and watching BJ and Billy connect and kind of build their friendship is after it's all like realizing the whole time that she's probably dead now.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's absolutely dead. Yeah.
And that just even talking about it is just taking me back and like I did not expect to be blown away on a personal and emotional level like I did. And I agree with Rand, like that scene in the house after you've had all the context with Billy and you've understood. But here's the weird thing, right? Like here's the weird thing. There is a human moment from BJ's dad during.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about this. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a human moment from his dad that suggests his dad wasn't always like that. And what it was is, BJ's a young boy and he's afraid that there's a monster in the basement, right? And instead of
that.
Yeah, and so instead of Rand, did you see this scene?
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of berating him and calling him a pussy like he does, or a little shit and beating the crap out of him, he says, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll get some we'll get some rifles. Here's how you shoot. We're gonna hold this. Be careful with it. We're gonna go down there. We're gonna get them together." And then he looks at his wife at oh God, what's her name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Because of the Z, BJ's mother. And he says Zofia.
Yeah.
He says, "Hey, Zofia, are you with us?" And she says, "Yep." And they all go down there in the basement with guns together, looking for the monster to make Billy feel safe. And then when you take that and you immediately, you immediately jump into that scene where Billy is confronting, when BJ is confronting his father, I was just like, wow, like how.
And that's the one scene, in my opinion, that really. There's some problematic things with that scene that we'll get into, but it's the one scene that stops the father from being 100% comic book evil, right?
Yeah, it just barely redeems him, and like that's the beauty of like a good villain, where it's someone like there's one aspect
he wasn't always. Yeah,
he's
got that part of him deep within that may actually love his family in a weird way.
But there was still some interesting things about that kind of make him a scummy dude, right? In that sequence, you're right, they do it downstairs. But before he says it, he says, "I've tried talking to you about it. I've tried beating it out of you."
That's true.
So this is what we're going to do. But worse than that, right, is so they storm the basement with guns. They're all holding guns. Whether BJ's got a BB gun or a 22, it's unclear. But after that, there's a quick scene where BJ, after they've stormed the basement, they find out there's something there. BJ's laying in bed alone, and he's asleep. And sitting next to him on the pillow is the gun. I think that is the part where I think we're supposed to say, "Oh, so this is how Billy's introduced to guns. This is how Billy is introduced to things that frighten him." And so, while it's not as blanketly awful as the rest of the scenes of the father, it still tells you a lot about BJ's upbringing and a lot of the ways BJ views masculinity and fear. It's a really, really compelling sequence.
Speaking of Billy or BJ being brought up and his, like, what we're talking about, his upbringing and the fact that his father's around and he's brought up with guns. Nobody here shot the dog, right? I just want to ask, like, nobody shot the dog, right?
I did both. I did both just to see if there was a difference.
Because I did not realize you could shoot the dog until I watched it on YouTube, and I was like, oh shit, you can actually shoot the dog.
I tried shooting the dad.
I tried that too, but it wouldn't let me go over all the way.
Yeah. Well, and there's some interesting things about that. Like, there are tons of little things. I don't think the dog does anything, but there's a scene where when you throw him out of the closet when you're a very small child and he's knocked your mother out, if you charge at him, he just grabs you right away. But if you grab a flower pot and you throw it at him, you cut his face and he's got a scar. And then when you go and see him in this sequence in the modern time, he's got that scar on his
That's face. Cool.
Yeah, it's like a little thing that you could totally miss. But getting back to what Rand started this whole thing with, you after this little flashback sequence, you go and you meet your dad. And does somebody want to take over what happens in that sequence really quick?
Rand, go ahead, man.
the best part of the game. I mean, it starts that whole sequence from going home to. I mean, it starts. I mean, you understand BJ's motivations. You understand why he is. You understand why he fights against the monsters, which he considers Nazis, because he considers his dad to be a monster. You understand like why BJ wants to be a good father to, I believe, twins, right?
Yep.
Right, because like his dad was such an asshole, and it's something that you wouldn't expect in really any game, let alone Wolfenstein. Right? I'm sitting there like jaw open on the floor, my heart's pounding because I don't know where this is gonna go. Like they're having like the most real conversation you can possibly have in a game about sneaking through ships, slitting Nazis' throats and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I was just in complete awe of the writing, and not only the writing, but the voice work by Brian Bloom and I forget the guy who does his dad, but he was in 24 for a while.
They were on fucking.
It was incredible.
Yep.
And
I mean,
Rand,
no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
It's the best scene in the game for me personally. Like even when I went to replay some stuff, because I'd made saves at each level because for whatever reason this game doesn't want you to do chapter select after you beat the game.
Yep.
I went and replayed that stuff.
Yep.
You know, and I was just like, this is absolutely incredible. Like, you know, but you know, I want to hear what you guys think. Anchorman, what do you think about that scene?
Oh my gosh, I absolutely loved every single cutscene in this game. First of all, so it was excellent, and with that one in particular, that just whole level of Mesquite was just absolutely amazing. It added a little extra to it. I mean, the whole thing could have been just one giant cutscene, first of all, but they didn't, and they kind of let you figure it out. And the thing with his dad was just such a, I don't know, it really
punch.
It hit me. It hit me in the right spot where like the game was sitting at like a 7, maybe an 8, and then it just bumped it straight up to Game of the Year. Yep. I was just like, this is so good. And what I love the pacing of this game too is just everything ramps up. Like on every single level, when it comes to the gameplay and action, it gets better and better and better. When it comes to the better weapons, it gets better and better and better. When it comes to the story, it just gets better. When it comes to just crazy WTF moments, they get more and more ridiculous from that point on.
Well, let me ask you guys this: like when BJ hatchets his father in the chest, like a boss, right? Like
he kills him. Yes. Yep.
Who here was hoping for a moment of contrition from his father? That one moment where he says like "run" or like hey, they're coming, you got to go, or I'm sorry, or like
oh no, I became the monster in the monster in the basement or something like that.
Yeah, like who here was either expecting or hoping for one. Because the reason I was hoping that BJ's dad would at least say, like, you got to go, you got to get out of here, is because I grew up with a violently abusive father who did terrible things to us when we were growing up. So, I having lived through that, I was hoping for some last spark of humanity to fly through his dad, but it didn't happen. It didn't. His father was a piece of shit to the very end.
And I think that's maybe to this game's credit that it will just resonate with people differently based on their experiences. But no, I'm happy that there wasn't a moment where he changed his mind, because I think it really helped hit on that same point of what Americans would become if they were given this opportunity to kind of live the white supremacist dream, right? And so like any sense, like, I mean, like he had to hate his son, and through and through to the end, he hated him. And I think it was a strong point to not back away from that.
Rand,
the father, I mean, because he talks about how he left right when he was able to at 18 to join the Marines, which, killed his mother. Right, like basically he said, "Oh, you just."
Then he throws that shit on him too. He throws his shit like, right? you abandoned your mom. You made her.
Abandoned your mom.
It's like,
but like the whole time he's like, "Oh, you know, he's like, I heard you were in the area, listen to the radio. I knew you'd come back. And he's like, and then he starts talking about how Blazkowicz is a respected name.
Yeah, like,
you know,
and he flat out says it too, Rand. He's like, then the Nazis came and things got a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. I knew there was no redemption, and I didn't think he'd call, but then it makes sense in the storyline. But oh, man, then the house shakes and the Ostmercer's right there.
Oh man, dude!
My lord!
When BJ realizes that his father has given him up to the Nazis, I was like, God damn it! I was like, oh, this guy can't catch a fucking break. Yep. Holy shit! I was not expecting his father to go that far. Yeah. To actually, but then again, maybe I should have, considering he served up his own wife and the mother of his child to the Nazis. But so let's move on. Let's talk about, you know,
this is where the game subverts what you think is going to happen twice.
Yeah.
It does this really good thing of like, you get captured, which I mean, I guess you would know if you saw some of the pre-release material, right?
Yep.
So, you know, and you're sitting there and you have the trial, or the trial's not first. They put you in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
They ripped off your head, and mother comes up and slaps you. And she's like, you killed my son. And you're sitting there thinking, like, well, you know.
Well, your son was a fucking Nazi, so.
I mean, like, your son's a Nazi, but you don't understand her pain, right? Then you get put into the interview room where best character in the game, probably, like, one of my best characters. He comes in there, super special.
Oh, yeah, as the lawyer, yep.
And he comes in there and he's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he has this whole plan. But like the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, like, they just let you walk into this place?
Yeah.
And it's not like, and he's like, oh, we were to put you in front of the court. And I'm like, they have like our like court system here. And of course, this is where the first shocking thing happens. He tried to escape and Engel like shoots in the back and kills him.
Yep.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Because the whole time you're thinking, all right, it's time to escape.
And Ray, like what I was expecting is, because we've already had a ridiculous wheelchair. Like I'm expecting, like, okay, I'm going to be fighting while Super Specialist pushing me through.
And when he's telling the story, you're thinking already of the future gameplay. Like, all right, we're going to go in the hall. I'm going to grab this gun. You're like already thinking in your head how you're going to escape from this thing and how it's all going to play out. The game subverts your experience, or what you think is going to happen, kills him. And then it's like flash to the courtroom, right? And you're like, "Oh man, what is going on?"
Daydream. Oh god.
And then you break out of it, and even though it's like this whole like sense of like there's something like you're about to like win, I felt like so uneasy during that. I don't know if it was the music, I don't know if it was like how easily escaped. I'm like, something is not right here. But
so let's talk about the courtroom scene for a minute, because like as powerful as I thought the imagery was, that was gameplay wise, that was the one part of the game where that my controller almost went through the fucking window.
Yeah, that was pretty tough.
Yeah, I over and over and over again had to save like every time I got like a break.
That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. I would hide in a corner and like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna save now. There's more Nazis, but I'm gonna save now. I saved like 10 fucking times in that room.
Yeah,
and it took me
every 4 kills save.
That was the one part of the game. That was the one. We're just talking specifically gameplay here. That was the one part of the game where I feel like it completely ground to a halt.
Yeah,
it was just too fucking difficult.
Yeah, and part of it, right, is because they went for the aesthetic of a big theatrical courtroom, and of course it doesn't lend itself to cool gunplay.
Exactly.
Naturally. But the one of the reasons I think that sequence is especially frustrating because it's so difficult is the context, right? Is one of the things, and I would normally say spoiler, but obviously that's why people are here, is that whole sequence is BJ Daisy.
Is in his mind.
Right. And so, like, in my mind, right, the logical, from a gameplay perspective, you would expect, since it's a daydream, it would be the easiest section of the game, that you would just, like, with comical ease, slaughtering Nazis.
And that's the one thing that doesn't make sense, right? Because I didn't know what was happening. Like, I thought he was really breaking out. I was like, okay. I mean, like Rand said,
of course it's going to be hard.
But since you don't know it's a dream yet,
right? Like, it's just after the fact, you're like, wait, what the fuck? Yeah,
like escaping from the. It makes sense that it's hard because you're trying to escape from this heavily fortified area. So to me, it made sense why it was hard.
No. Like, it makes sense it was hard, but what got me is when I realized it was a dream. I thought back to like those 45 fucking times I died, and I was like,
oh yeah,
what? That doesn't make any sense. I was like, well, this is all happening in my head. if I got shot down by the Nazis, why am I getting a game over? I didn't die. I'm imagining all this.
Right.
I mean,
No, it's only from a gameplay perspective flawed in hindsight, right? Like that's all I meant. No, from the first time you're initially playing it, because you think you're genuinely breaking out, so it's perfectly fine. But just that initial sequence, it's just so gruelingly difficult.
But did nobody else you thought like the whole time, like right when you break out, I'm like, this is too easy. Like, because you broke out of your chains too easily.
Oh yeah.
You just happen to get up.
Especially since like your body is so broken and you don't have the suit anymore. Like when when he broke out, I was like, whoa, how's he doing this all of a sudden? Like,
right.
And I just kind of went with it because I'm like, okay, Wolfenstein, like, I mean, I've seen more ridiculous shit happen to Wolfenstein.
But it's playing to your expectations because you expect him to get out at some point. You expect him to get out with the lawyer, but they don't. They kill him. You expect him to break out of the chains, but you don't. It's a dream, which all leads into the next thing, which I want to talk about the scene with the mother because
I was hoping you'd go there.
Like, oh my god, that was so good.
Like as soon as you see her, you know it's a dream.
You know it's
she's dead. But it's such a tender moment. It's such a compare and contrast between the scene we just had with the father to the scene we have with the mother.
Yep.
It's such a beautiful scene, in my opinion.
Well, and it to me, what he was saying reinforced my belief that he was somber in the first half of the game because he felt like he was disappointed to be alive. He was tired. He's like, you know what? I killed Death's Head. The world is done. Like, I can't do this anymore. I just don't want to do this anymore. And that was his mindset throughout the entire first half of the game. So everything leading up into that point when he is, imagining speaking to his mother, that's all coming out. Like, I'm tired. I'm tired of living. I'm tired of fighting. It's time to put the gun down. And that to me, and of course my mother growing up played that role of comfort, whenever my father would go off the rails. And so again, like that, like this is, I teared up a little bit.
Yeah.
It was such a powerful fucking moment. And especially especially like we just said, or like Ryan just said, coming off that scene with his dad, talk about fucking contrast. Just a contrast is just unbelievable. And then of course we come to the execution.
Right.
Zach, why don't you take us away, man?
Sure. And so basically, he snaps out of the daydream sequence, and he's actually being sentenced. And no, you don't break out. In the next sequence, you are at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington D.C. Across from you is the Washington Monument, and the crowds are full. They're all chanting because they're thrilled to see BJ executed, Terror Billy be executed. And this whole sequence is so wild because, like we were just talking about, BJ has escaped the clutches of Nazis countless times. And so to see him being placed down and then see Frau Engel take out her sword and behead you, it just feels insane. Like, it is a moment where everyone is just like, what?
Okay, so
it's insane.
So let's explore that for a minute, right? And I want to go to Anchorman first.
Sure.
So like, Frau Engel pulls her sword out, and the whole time I'm thinking, what's gonna happen? I'm like, they're gonna hijack some kind of plane, and they're gonna come in, and shit's gonna hit the fan, and this is when they're gonna wheel me out of here, and I'm gonna be dual wielding my fucking machine guns. And then she brings the sword down, and the screen goes red. I was like, did I miss a button prompt? I'm like, what? So Anchor, I want to start with you. Like, when she makes that first sword cut, and you realize what's happening, like, how does your brain process that?
At first, I was like, This is false. This is fake advertising. This is false advertising. Where's my yellow jacket? I bought this for the yellow jacket.
I know, right?
Like, I was like, I can't believe this. Like, I was
like,
really
no, dude,
mad.
I thought I'd missed a button prompt.
I thought the game was going to swap to Anya's perspective for the rest of the game.
That would have been incredible. Actually.
It would have been awesome. Yeah, I would have loved that. But no, that scene is wild.
But it didn't, as we as the four of us know, BJ's head is separated from his fucking body.
Yep.
And at this point, the game goes off the rails in the most beautiful way it possibly could have. The Kreisau Circle has hijacked a drone, and they grab BJ's.
It's ridiculous, dude. It's
insane. Yes. So she's holding his head over a fire pit, probably 100 feet up, and she drops it into the fire pit. And there's a little piece of cement that's like a cross beam of support. And in that sequence, a drone catches BJ's head and drops a fake head into the fire and swoops it away. And then the team is hurrying as fast as possible to plug basically oxygen and blood support into BJ's brain so they can keep his head alive.
So like, I mean, like, fuck, like,
which is foreshadowed in one of the optional conversations you can have in the in the ship.
I talk about the
monkey cat.
The monkey cat,
like, because the doctor, they talk about that, and it makes sense when you realize what's about to happen. Although the game spoiled you, because the cover of the game has BJ with the thing on his neck and his new.
We don't figure it out though.
And I didn't even make that connection. I didn't even make that connection until after it happened. And so like when you realize it, you're like, oh shit, it was fucking right in front of us the entire time.
Yeah.
Like and so that happened, and I was like, there's no fucking way they're going there, right? And they did, and it's the pulpiest shit and the most amazing shit. Like this would not have worked in any other game.
Nope.
It would not have worked in any.
Yeah.
But not even in Doom. But in the world, the pulpy science fiction, Nazi ruled world that Machine Works has created, it works. And I don't believe another studio or another game could have pulled it off the way they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that and I think that was the moment where I realized that you are witnessing masters at work.
Yeah. I mean, think about it, John. What did we just go through in the course of like an hour of gameplay there? You had this down-to-earth, disgusting human conversation between father and son that clearly hate each other, to a kind of heartwarming scene with the mother, right? To a scene where your head gets chopped off, put into a oxygen tube, and then reattached to a like it's so ridiculous.
Every
like,
time we talk about it, I just start laughing.
Two different spectrums, like the top here, and it's just like it only works in Wolfenstein, and that's why it's so great, because you get both. You get the zany elements that Wolfenstein can offer like Mecha Hitler, in the previous ones and stuff. Just ridiculous Wyatt tripping his balls off.
Oh, right. That's another question we gotta ask. What did you guys? Who did you pick the first time?
Fergus.
First playthrough Fergus, second playthrough Wyatt.
I was so pissed, Anchorman, because I accidentally chose to save Wyatt, and originally my first playthrough on Wolfenstein New Order was Fergus. So I wanted to continue it, right? Yeah. So I accidentally chose Wyatt, who I didn't play through New Order twice. Did I play through it twice? No, I didn't. So I didn't really know anything about his character because I didn't play through New Order twice. And I'm like, man, I don't like this dude. But he became like one of my favorite characters because his arc with the whole, tripping on acid and stuff was just so well done. And I love that character.
And here's the thing, right? In the last game, so I've played all of these games a couple times. Yeah, in the last game, Fergus had the more interesting arc. He was a more competent character. Yep. He was more interesting. This is in the New Order. In the new Colossus, his character isn't very interesting. Fergus, that isn't all that interesting. His interesting quirk is that he's got a robotic arm that thinks for itself. It sounds interesting. They don't really go anywhere with it. But
yeah, but that one scene where he's smashing the cookie into his face, that was great.
But the way Wyatt's character evolves, both dealing with
PTSD, really.
Well, yeah, PTSD, and he's self-medicating using LSD. But I think what also is so interesting, and I don't know if you haven't played the Wyatt playthrough, maybe you don't know this, but in the New Order, one of the characters that's in the Wyatt timeline is basically Jimi Hendrix. His character is called. Jay. His character is Jay. And so in the beginning of this game, Wyatt is dealing with the loss of Jay, who he was close to. And so like Wyatt's character arc was so great. I played through as Fergus first, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is fine. And then I went back through with Wyatt, and it's so much more compelling.
Oh, definitely. See, I chose Wyatt the first time because in New Order I chose Fergus, and like I got halfway through my second playthrough with Wyatt, and I was like, this isn't that big of a difference this time. And I was like, I liked Fergus more, and so this time I was like, I'll give Wyatt a shot. And so I regret nothing.
Well, let's talk. I want to talk for a minute, if you guys don't mind, about the complete tonal shift in BJ when he gets his new body. Yeah. Because up until that point, he has been, like we talked about, he has been melancholy. He doesn't want to live anymore. He's tired of fighting. But now he essentially has his health back. He has his life back. He realizes that he's not going to die. He's going to be able to see his children be born, and there is he's given a new sense of purpose. And that to me is when, like, the game became, like, up until then it was a chore to play, but in a good way, because it was such an emotional drain.
Well,
you know
plus it was reflected in your health and your armor.
Yeah, your health doubled.
Yeah.
You could have 200 armor, but only up to 50 health.
Only up to 50 health, but with his new body, it was like BJ was a new man. He's like, I'm ready to kill fucking Nazis now, and that was the attitude I had. So at that point, honestly, I stopped stealthing as much as I did, and I started playing like BJ just wants to kill fucking Nazis. And so I would bust into places, dual wielding my fucking assault rifles, and I would play BJ as I imagined he would, given this new opportunity and this new, younger, much more powerful body.
Right. And I love the juxtaposition of so the body BJ is given after his head is severed is basically this kind of science to be built super soldier body built by the Nazis. And so the irony of the Nazis building this super soldier ideal Aryan, what the ideal Aryan body would look like, and then putting BJ Blazkowicz, a half Polish Jewish man's head onto it. It's just the ultimate irony, and it's.
I agree.
I mean, in some ways it's so pulpy and silly, but it's also really empowering and badass. And like you guys were saying, I love that the health doubled. It's a great sequence, and yeah, like it's funny. He goes from that classic, not the classic, but the New Order clothing, and then he's wearing the leather jacket now.
Yep.
It's just like
he's a badass now.
Right? Yeah. Now, yeah, he's a badass now with that body, which is a little bit funny. But no, it's incredible. I mean, some of the gameplay decisions they do with the body now being able to be really strong or stand up really tall or get into really small holes is like a little iffy for me. But from a tonal perspective, it's like the kick in the ass the game needs at the halfway point.
I agree. Well, it's almost like you know what it made me think of? I was like, it's almost like the game had a cup of really strong coffee, and now we're fucking ready to go again.
So
right,
that second wind.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it represented to me.
Right. And just moving things along. So once you're on the new body, you need to you ultimately go back to New York City for a second romp. It's a little bit better than the first time you go to New York City from a gameplay perspective, but you're looking for a dossier on a second resistance group, which you discover to be a group in the New Orleans ghetto. But the Germans are quickly going through and exterminating the leftovers of the New Orleans ghetto, so you have to hurry to New Orleans to basically save this group. And so you end up meeting up with another very, very fascinating character in the game, and I'll pass it on to somebody else to talk about that.
Anybody want to pick it up?
I forgot his name.
Horton.
That's the right?
Horton,
okay.
Horton, right?
What I really
almost
loved
said Horowitz.
What I really loved about that scene was they were almost like rap battling to each other, right?
You talking about when they were drinking across the table?
Yeah,
Yes.
And they're talking about, like, BJ's talking about, if you weren't being such hippies and protesting, if you just come over there the first time with us, we wouldn't be dealing with this bullshit now.
Yep.
I thought that was a really good scene. I thought, like, all of them are really good characters, even the dude on the clarinet.
Yes, that was the best part about it, too, because he was actually one of my favorite side characters, especially if you're playing the Wyatt timeline, because when he gives that little pep talk to him. And I love Paris Jack because, like, especially that scene is so well done. And you can hear like the jazz and the clarinet ramping up as the conversation goes on. Yep. And it's beautiful.
And what was another thing that was interesting to me was when BJ met Horton for the first time. He said, look, he's like, we can fight together and we can kill the Nazis and we can liberate this country, but I am not liberating this country just to see it taken over by communism. He was like, so as long as we have that understanding, he's like, because you're a communist, and he shoots back, well, you're a part of the proletariat, and they can't find that common thread to actually unite them,
right?
Right.
But like, I also think about and they had that kind of back and forth, and BJ passes out from drinking Horton's moonshine. That's way too strong.
Yeah.
I think Bethesda needs to patent that. I need a trademark. I need it in stores now.
Horton's moonshine. Yeah, I'll drink it.
But anyway, so that scene kind of ends, and it's a wonderful scene. Easily the best cutscene in the game. It's shot so well. It's carried so well by the music. But so you're needing to escape the New Orleans ghetto before you set off another nuclear bomb in the New Orleans ghetto where the Germans are. And so basically you act as a diversion to get the Nazis to chase you, and then you use a nuclear bomb's blast to kind of shove your U-boat out into the water. And then you get to the whole crew, including Horton and his communists, and you in the Kreisau Circle, and then Grace and the Black Panthers are all on this boat.
Is this the birthday party?
Not quite.
Okay.
This is a
That's after
very
Venus.
yes, that's after
Right,
Venus.
right.
There's a
Venus.
very good discussion that kind of happens here, and it's very small, and it's about power dynamics because the Black Panthers, the Kreisau Circle, and the communists all have a different vision for what they want America to be. And what I really like about this game is that they didn't try to make the Black Panthers a joke. They didn't make the communists a joke, but they said, these people have different ideology. But at the end of the day, all of them are better than fucking Nazis.
Yeah.
And so that's what they united about, and they were gonna figure out the rest later. And that's just such a cool, nuanced take because it's so easy and such a cheap, thing to make the communism, to make Horton's view of the proletariat and the U.S. military complex, to make that into a joke. And they didn't, and I have a lot of respect for that. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well, and on the subject of Venus here, so I was not expecting you to go to Venus, right? Like I didn't,
yeah, right.
I'm like Venus.
Nazis on the moon. How
Jesus,
can you love Nazis on the moon?
Like fucking Venus, and so we get to Venus, and I thought Venus was actually a really cool level.
Felt like Doom aesthetically.
But let's talk about how we got there. Let's talk about how we're introduced to Venus when we so BJ disguises himself as an American actor, flies up to Venus to star in a movie written by the Führer, and he gets there, and lo and behold, Adolf Hitler himself walks in, and I got to tell you, I was a little disappointed at the end of the game because at first I was like, oh shit, Mecha Hitler, like we're getting Mecha Hitler, which of course at the end of the game didn't happen.
Mecha Hitler's next game.
Yeah, that's the next game.
It has to be.
But so Hitler walks in, and right off the bat, I love how they just treated him as this senile old fool.
Yep.
Because fuck Hitler and fuck Nazis, and he's pissing in a bucket and vomiting, and like he vomits on the floor and just goes about his business. And so Hitler is very obviously in the early stages of either Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yep.
And so Hitler he's doing his thing, and he's auditioning these people in a way that you would expect Hitler to do. But one thing I didn't pick up on, and I don't think you guys picked up on it either, but I know Zach did.
Yep.
Zach told me this, and it blew my fucking mind. So Zach, why don't you speak on that?
So when you first get to the room where you're auditioning, and for everybody just filling in the blanks, so you're auditioning for a role in a propaganda film made by a German director, and Adolf Hitler is the producer, and you're trying out for the part of Terror Billy. So you're dressed up to play yourself in a propaganda film about yourself.
Yeah.
It's just like a really funny little nuance thing. But anyway, you get to this, you're in this auditioning room, and it's you and 3 other guys, and so you get to look at an audition sheet of all the different people who are auditioning it, and there's 4 men, including yourself, and one of them's first name is Ronald, and there's like a little coffee smudge next to his name, which is like nothing. And then as you go to take a seat, there's a whole bunch of like of little seats around the area, and if you look behind there's a chair hanging over a seat, and it really,
I picked up on this too.
And it shows the letters GAN at the end of the chair.
It's fucking.
And so if you put it together, one of the men is Ronald Reagan. It's supposed to be Ronald Reagan. And subsequently, the scene begins, and Hitler is out giving auditions. And right away, Adolf Hitler starts talking, and the guy who's supposed to be Ronald Reagan stands up right away and tries to be a kiss-ass, saying that he knows German and his kids know German too. And Adolf immediately picks up that he's a kiss-ass and shoots him and kills him immediately. Just like the idea of like this really, like you have to really look for it to be really paying attention.
That was actually
the game just
fucking Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, like the game has Ronald Reagan. I'm like, yeah, we're going to introduce Ronald Reagan. We're going to show him to be, a fart in the wind character that just goes with whatever's going on, and he wants to be a kiss-ass to whoever's in power. And like, I don't know if you guys know this. I'm sure you probably do. one of the ways that Ronald Reagan became incredibly popular in film is that he ratted out other people in Hollywood during the Red Scare.
Yep.
And so, like, this is basically the game getting revenge on somebody who was just being a terrible opportunist to fuck over other people.
Like, I did not even pick up on that until Zach told me.
And it's so good. Like, once you pick up on it, it's so rewarding to see that.
Now, I wish I had seen that. I wish I had seen that for myself now. Because that would have been such an amazing... Like Rand, did you pick up on that at all? Or
No, I had no clue. I had no clue. Which one's Reagan? The first one? The one that he kills first?
Blue shirts, yeah. Immediately killed... Yeah,
the one that was like...
It's the less hippie one.
Hey,
it's
Adolf.
the one who wasn't like the super hippie. Like,
oh, so it wasn't the first guy that Adolf killed. It was.
I think he's sitting on your left when you're sitting in your casting chair.
Yeah, he's got like a blue jacket on.
Yeah, and he's immediately like, I know this book you're referencing, and my kids have read it too.
Yeah,
and like, yeah, and, and he's the one who keeps calling him Mr. Hitler instead of Mein Führer.
Yep.
Oh yeah, so he's the guy that dies right away.
Oh, immediately, yeah, no, they intentionally do that.
That was actually fucking Ronald Reagan.
It's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny.
So I got to ask you guys, who kicked Hitler in the face?
Oh, immediately.
Okay, good. I
missed it the first time through.
Yeah, I didn't even notice it. I was just like,
I was
kill everything.
Well, I was walking by, and I walked by, and I was like, well, I mean, anytime I see Adolf Hitler, my first inclination is to find a way to kill him in the quickest way possible. So I just like stopped and I looked down, and there's a button prompt, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And you actually get like a trophy for it. Or if you're on Xbox, you get an achievement for it.
Is it before you go into the fighting ring, or is it after that?
It's before you go into that glass box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can actually stop and kill Hitler by kicking his skull in, and you'll immediately die because the Nazis will kill you. But you'll actually get an achievement for it.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm gonna do this right now.
Kicking it.
It's called kicking it.
I'm gonna do that right now.
Yeah, I intentionally saw that achievement and I know I didn't get it. I am 2/3 of the way through the Wyatt playthrough. Like I just got past that sequence, but going into that scene I saved, so I'll go back and do that. But yeah,
no, really, you could just go and you know in the subway you can just go there and just replay the mission, right? In the sub.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just go to the back hangar and just go pick up the mission.
Rand, did you know that was basically a way to go back and replay levels? I had no idea.
I don't
know about cutscenes. But
you can
levels.
Replay the level. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I know there's the table where they do like their side missions. But anyway, so this whole sequence is great. It's hilarious. It's empowering, and it's like really interesting to see that little Easter egg about Reagan. But the real reason you're on Venus is because you're looking for the Odin codes. And these Odin codes are stored there because after what happened in Roswell, the Nazis are very careful with their secrets and their information. Yep. And so your Odin codes, correct me if I'm wrong, I think these are what give you control of, if you are on top of Frau Engel's ship, oh God, what is it called? Ausmerzer. If you're on the Ausmerzer,
yeah.
If you have the Odin codes on the Ausmerzer, you can take it over. You can take control of it, and that's what you want for the Resistance. So you're on Venus. You just basically this casting call thing entirely exists as an excuse for you to get on to the station. And once you're there to get the Odin codes. And so after this little tryout scene, you're back in your room, and a Nazi's helping you unpack your bags. He sees you've got a gun. You kill him, and you have to basically fight your way through this Venus station, and ultimately make your way to the Odin codes, where you go back home. It's a pretty good level. I thought aesthetically it reminded me a lot of last year's Doom.
A little bit, yeah.
But the story beats are really fun. There's some interesting gimmicks with how the game handles like temperature differences.
Yeah, you gotta refill the cryogenic fluid.
Yeah, so you don't burn to death.
It's
so you don't freeze, something like that.
No, it's to keep you cool, so you don't burn, because Venus is so much closer to the sun. But yeah, so you get the Odin codes, and then you go back and you have BJ's birthday, which is one of my favorite scenes in the entire game.
Yes.
I loved BJ's birthday, and because it was so like at that point, like I don't fucking put anything past this game anymore. So like the sheer ridiculousness of that scene, I just like at that point after meeting Hitler, I needed something fun and something ridiculous, and that scene delivered in spades. I love the birthday scene.
Yep, and in the Fergus line, that is the one interesting scene with Fergus is in that sequence, in my opinion.
I actually thought that Fergus and Grace Walker were going to get together at some point. Like that's what I expected. Obviously that didn't happen, but Sigrun. Let's talk about Sigrun for a moment.
Yeah.
Her moment at the birthday party, I think, or right after the birthday party, where she puts her foot down because she's been called a Nazi by Grace Walker the entire game, and she says, "I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. Stop calling me a Nazi." And then she loses her cool. She slaps the shit out of Grace Walker, earns her respect, and then looks at Bombate and says, "I'm in love with you, you fucking idiot." And then she says, and it hurts that you don't love me back. And I really I was like, I was hoping they would take her in this direction.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things.
More specifically, she's for background because we didn't talk about this. There's a really funny scene where she and Bombate are inside the submersible.
Right.
But then if you walk around, you see Bombate's he's been with other people on the ship, and so this is background.
Yeah,
right.
No,
See, I'm of a different opinion here. I love the thing where she went after Grace about the whole, because it was leading up to that point, because she said all the time, "Why is this Nazi on this ship? Who are you, Nazi?" So she finally retaliates, gets her respect. But I thought the whole stuff with Bombate about, "Oh, I wish you loved me," was just so unearned. It's just
that's interesting.
Even still, because Bombate himself is not a well fleshed out character.
He's not
like any of the other ones. So I just thought it was they try to go for this. I don't know. I wish they would have just kept it like, "I'm not a Nazi," instead of immediately going to the black character that's not fleshed out, who's romantic and going against all the other broads and being like, "I loved you," and whatever. I was just like, eh.
But I think the one saving grace, and I think what you're saying has a ton of merit, but I think the one saving grace of that scene is that she says, you're right, she does say, "I loved you, you can't see that," but what I love is she says, "But you can't stop me from using your body." Every once in a while.
Yeah,
so there's a little bit of comic relief to that scene that really helps.
But I mean, the only build up to that scene we get is them doing it in
absolutely,
the ship. And so all of a sudden she loves him. At least with you're a Nazi, I'm not a Nazi. That was built up from the very beginning of the game to finally get its payoff.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Rand, is that you don't catch her shooting any desirous glances at Bombate through the game. You don't see her pursuing him. All of a sudden she's just like, "I'm in love with you."
Well, and frankly, her having sex, I mean, obviously sexuality is a spectrum, but the whole point in the early game when Grace is decapitated and she puts Grace's Grace.
Grace
decapitated. When she decapitates Carolyn in the early sequence, Frau Engel, and she puts the head in Sigrun's crotch, and she's remember this whole time she's saying, "I've read your diary," and there's some
I thought they were insinuating she was a lesbian.
Yeah, no, I mean they absolutely are insinuating that she's a lesbian, and then they put the Carolyn's head in her crotch, and it's just it's just, again, in the early game they really make her comic evil, but obviously, I mean, she's probably supposed to be bisexual, but just because of that one initial scene where it kind of implied that she's gay, and then there's that sequence that's out of the blue where he's having sex with Bombate, it was kind of out of nowhere, and I have no problem that someone is bisexual. It was just because he's only really got 3 big scenes. It's the initial scene, it's sex with Bombate, and then it's this ending scene. It just was really confusing to pick up on her character, and there are so many good little character moments, but I just feel like Sigrun and Bombate didn't quite get the screen time that I wanted from them, because they both seem interesting. I mean, everyone on the ship is interesting.
Well, I think the reason that they went with the Sigrun and Bombate relationship is to really hammer home the fact that she was raised by a Nazi, but here she is. She's very liberal. She's in love with an African American man, so she's about as not a Nazi as it gets. And I feel like while I really liked Sigrun as a character, I feel like they could have made her stronger than what she was.
Yeah.
And I feel that I know what they were trying to do with her, and I feel like it was, I don't know, I guess a little too on the nose.
But I think she's going to have a wonderful arc if they get to make a next game based on sales.
That's a big
arc. Because her arc is so perfect for what they want to show the American people, right? Somebody who is born by the worst of the worst and raised by the worst of the worst, and then turns, right? I mean, so I think they can do a ton with her character going forward. But you're right, she is so underdeveloped in this game that it's kind of a shame in that last sequence. But it's still strong.
So we've got about 20 minutes left, 15, 20 minutes. Let's touch on the end game.
Yeah.
So when you're on the Ausmerzer, you got the Odin codes, and then obviously you're fighting your way through the Ausmerzer. You're killing Nazis. You're killing Nazi robots. I was a little underwhelmed by the final encounter in the game. which was just two bigger Nazi robots.
Yeah, on the ship.
Yeah, that was
6 of them and then 2 huge ones.
It was bad. It was a bad fight, guys. It was really like from a gameplay perspective, it was bad.
I think we can admit that. I spent so. As opposed to the run and gun nature of the rest of the game, where you are just literally mowing through hordes of Nazis, and you're like fuck cover, and you're running through. I spent the almost the entirety of that fight hiding in those little hallways, and at the top of the ship, and then popping out and like shooting, like throwing a grenade at one of the huge robots because they will kill you in fucking seconds.
Yeah,
and then ducking back in, and then like listening to their footsteps walking around, and then I would, okay, they're far away. I'll run out and I'll pop a few more shots, and it felt very rote and unsatisfying and completely at odds with the gameplay that I just spent the past 12 hours going through. Yeah. And to say nothing of the fact that like at least in the first one, like I wasn't expecting a big epic boss fight with Frau Engel, because that would have made any sense. But at the same time, the confrontation with Death's Head in the first one was epic and satisfying and
it was very
scale.
like in tone for what you'd expect from Wolfenstein.
Exactly, and this was just two big Nazi robots. And that were aesthetically, apart from their size, no real different than what I had fought before.
Yeah, they were just really, right. They were just two tall boys, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was a bad fight, and it felt like, but in like the end game, which we'll get to, that last little cutscene little gameplay section of cutscene is fantastic. But It feels like something was like cut between that fight and how you get there. It just feels really rushed. But to keep things short. Essentially, you kill these two big guys, and you meet up with Anya. She mows down a bunch of Nazis.
Rips off her shirt.
Rips off her pregnant.
Which was kind of weird.
Drenched in blood.
There's a combat roll.
She's a combat roll.
Pregnant.
Okay. I'd almost forgotten about that. I'm glad we brought that up. So that was the one part of the game. The one part of the game where I feel like the sheer ridiculousness of it didn't work for me.
It was very Tarantino.
It was very Tarantino, but it was also just very. I was like, why? Like,
yeah,
like why? I understand what Anya is a powerful, badass woman, and that's what they're trying to portray. And I think, but I feel like they didn't need to do that to portray her as a badass. I already know she's a badass. Well, Anya's a badass.
Well, and it's so different from the conversation we were having last night about games during the regular podcast. Like, it wasn't like they clearly weren't trying to make her sexy. Like, her taking off her shirt was not sexual at all. It was just like one of those things where like it just felt very art house. And it's just like, all right. Like, I guess this is kind of cool imagery. Like a nude woman who's pregnant, covered in like Nazi blood, is like kind of interesting to look at.
If I'm BJ and she's pregnant with my twins, I'd have been like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, get out of here. Put your shirt back on. Like, you're going to get yourself and our children killed. Like, what are you doing? When she rips her shirt off, honestly, and then you got this pregnant naked woman shooting guns. I just imagine my wife walking in going, what the fuck are you playing?
Yeah. So my girlfriend was sitting next to me on the couch, and she was, she's used to watching me play games or whatever. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment, so she sees it all the time. And like neither of us were like, oh, this is like a weirdly, oddly over-sexualized scene. Like, no, it was just like, this is just kind of strange. It's
strange and unnecessary. Yeah, it wasn't sexualized at all.
No, it was just like, all right.
Okay, that's an interesting decision.
Yeah. But,
whatever.
But the Johnny Carson scene in the end, does somebody want to talk about that? It's fantastic.
Yes. So that's a
great way to end the game.
Yep. So I got to tell you, who else sat up there in the rafters and listened to the entire conversation play out?
Not the whole thing.
I listened to about 75% of it.
I listened to the whole thing until they cut to commercial break, and there was a moment there where Johnny Carson, he's like, she I'm only saying this because she paid me. And there's like 5 seconds of uncomfortable silence. And then Frau Engel starts laughing. And I was like, for a minute, I was like, she's going to fucking kill him on air. But that whole scene really hammered home to me the level of complicity that the American public had. Because he's sitting there like, Wunderbar, and he's like, oh, this is great. Frau Engel, how do you stay so slim and healthy? And then what really got me was when she was talking about Sigrun. And she was like, I'm so sad that my daughter left me. And she was acting like she was heartbroken over it. And the whole time I'm like, God, you can't even have a genuine human moment about your daughter because you weren't heartbroken over it.
Right.
You hated your daughter, and that to me really cemented her status as just a great antagonist that you love to hate.
Well, wouldn't it be kind of very similar to BJ's father and BJ?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Well, and let's, and you know, like while we're on the subject of Frau Engel, I mean, they hinted at an actual attraction from Engel to BJ throughout the game. She was constantly coming, like, you know, that scene when she was putting her gun in his mouth
after they kill Super Special.
After they kill Super Special, and then she says right before the execution, we could have been beautiful together, you know. And I'm not,
did that in the last game too, right when you're on the train.
Yeah, and she says, look at your nice Aryan form, you know. And I always got that, but that's part of the reason that Frau Engel hates him so much, because she knows that he's this half Jew Polish guy now, and she has a physical attraction to him, and she hates him for it.
Yep. Well, I love that, right? Is in the first game they keep hitting on, you know, oh, he's got these beautiful Aryan features, and then like the whole time, both in the game and just from what we know from history, right? They demonize the appearance of Jewish people, and so like, for her to like talk about how he looks so Aryan, but to find out he's half Jewish, is so perfect, right?
And I think that's why she hates him so much, is because she's attracted to him. Sure. And I think she's angry at herself a little bit for being attracted to this half Polish Jew, you know. But this set. So like, let's talk about her death scene.
Yeah.
When you come down from those rafters, and you've got basically like the Nazi Beatles playing in the background.
Dikampfer, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, and you run forward and you bury that axe in her face, and like, and then what does BJ say to her? I forget what he says to her.
I don't remember.
Whispering to her, and there's this look, and again, this is just machine work showing that they are masters of their craft. There is this look of just not just disbelief, but incomprehension.
Right. Well, and remember, for that foot look on her face is totally justified, because she hasn't.
Yeah. Nobody
who's faced BJ post beheading has lived to talk about it. So to her, she beheaded this man, right? And I think that's part of the look, but it's incredible.
And Anchorman and Rand, I want to know. Zach and I have been talking. Like, I want to know what you guys thought of that ending scene between Engel and BJ when he buries the axe in her face. Those final moments between the two.
It was well deserved. I was waiting to do. I thought it was a little bit, like quick time event, or not even really a quick time event. It just kind of happens.
Are you hoping for like a small shootout or something?
I mean, I know you had one with Death Head's last game. This one maybe is a little bit more appropriate. I did like how he wanted to do it up close and personal.
Up close and personal. Like, you deserve a personal touch. Yeah.
But really fast, I just wanted to talk about, like, because I watched both endings, right? Like the actual endings.
Yeah.
And I got to say, Wyatt's one is a million times better than the Ferguson one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because I love how Wyatt pretty much talks the entire time. It really kind of completes his arc as a leader for what, like, I believe what he went to school for, right? Like, to be like
a military. Harvard,
commander. So he becomes the leader, but it's a very like, it's not like a rah-rah speech, you know, because he talks about I'm losing my train of thought here, but how it's going to be a hard road or whatever, right? And I like how that keeps BJ in the back, because BJ's always been a soldier.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want BJ to give a speech. I wanted BJ to be in the background as just this like soldier.
Yeah, he's there to take orders.
Right.
Right. So I found that awesome. Of course, it's got the terrible credit music at the end.
Oh my God.
That was so bad.
Yeah. But the coolest thing about that was they remembered the ring, which they set up from the very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Where he goes back to the house to get, and then remembers that she stole it from him, put it on her finger, and then he takes it off, you know, her dead body, and gives. I love it when writers and stories like set up something from the very beginning and then pay it off at the end. I love when stories do that, and it's a sign of.
And Rand, what a great line too when BJ hits his knee and he says, "You make me strong and you make me weak." Like. Oh, I mean, dude, the writing in this game is just fucking unbelievable.
But, dude, so I really enjoyed that ending. So I'm kind of curious to see what you Fergus, because I watched the Fergus one and I thought the ending was bad. With the way they situated it with Fergus.
it's much more forceful than the Wyatt one. And like they definitely use, because Wyatt really, I get the feeling that going forward, like Wyatt was the correct choice.
Yeah.
So to speak, because like the Fergus one is just like he just sits in the background, and like they give him like a little funny scene at the very towards the end where he's just cursing, just screaming at a camera, and like it's like that's funny, but it's just kind of like okay.
Like honestly, and like they won't do it because they've committed to 2 games, but I almost wish they just made the Wyatt timeline the official lore.
Like the actual canon timeline?
Right, like stop fucking around with Fergus, because like I don't know, I forgot how many of you guys said that you did just Fergus, but like compared to Wyatt, and again I haven't finished Wyatt's timeline completely, it's so much stronger and so much more compelling, and that character
so much
is so
better.
Yeah, right. Like even when he's just voicing over the radio, it's so much better than Fergus. Fergus feels like a Call of Duty protagonist or secondary protagonist with you. But Wyatt is so strong. But yeah, so the conclusion from the Fergus timeline, what really stuck to me, and they use it in the trailer for it, is the dialogue from I'm forgetting her name. Grace is incredible, right? Whether you got a knife in your hand or you just got a closed fist, it's incredible. And one of the things that I've heard discussed, and I think it's probably something that we'll have to reflect on in many years to come, is that dialogue obviously works for the narrative, but it also feels very contemporary. Yep. And so in that way, I felt Grace's lines felt very good in 2017 America. In 10 years, it could feel corny as hell. You know what I mean? Yeah. But for some reason, like her whole dialogue is goosebumps to me. It's incredibly powerful.
Well,
yeah.
So we're talking about the end of the game, and now the credits are rolling, and whether or not you've played whether or not you're doing for the Fergus ending or the Wyatt ending, which I agree the Wyatt ending is stronger, simply because I feel like Wyatt is a more natural leader. But so I guess the next question is, where does the series go from here?
Mecha Hitler, baby.
So provided we even get a third one.
Yeah, it has to be Mecha Hitler. That's the only course of action.
Yeah, especially because like they didn't kill him off. He's still technically alive.
And he's sick.
He's sick.
Well, and they're obviously setting up for it. I mean, they're gonna, especially with like the whole switching bodies thing. Like it's obvious what is coming next. I think is going to be Mecha Hitler. But from like a story perspective, where do you guys want? What do you guys want to see happen? Because they talk about using the United States as a platform to liberate the rest of the world. So, would you guys want to see like basically the second American Revolution in full swing in the next game?
I
think that'll be part of it.
I'm actually hoping that America is either maybe the very beginning of the game, but honestly, I mean the Nazis have the whole world, right, in this narrative. And so we spend a lot of time. The whole narrative, except for Venus, is in the United States. I would love to see them go back to Europe, back to Africa, back. And I also would love that they only ever reference it in very small doses, and it's very vague. I would love to see how the Pacific Theater ended up in this lore.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the first 2 levels being in America. Whether they do Dishonored, Death of the Outsider style mini game. That's or Old Blood style, or a full. I would obviously ideally a full third game, but I want to see them. Globetrotting basically.
They're Nazi ninjas.
There's DLC coming, right? There's DLC focused on different characters. I think.
But so the first episode 0 is what they're calling it. It's out now, and there are people totally secondary to the story. And from what I gathered, they seem to maybe be prequels to what's going on in the story. Okay. It's hard to tell, I guess, from the era, from the episode 0.
What's crazy when you think about a sequel is that they have got to find something to top BJ getting decapitated.
I got 2 that could be fun. Okay, I have 2 ideas. So with the next one, I kind of want them to have a break. I want there to be a break narratively. Instead of just Wolfenstein 2 where they just picked up immediately where they left off, I would rather they take a break. And I think one of them, I think at that point they need to kind of rectify the whole Wyatt and Fergus timeline a little bit, like have one of them get killed or whatever. I don't know, just whoever. It doesn't matter. I think they need to rectify that. Yeah, either pick one and go with it, or just make it so that whoever the person that lived died, but like have some period of time in between there to have a break. But what you do instead is have like you're basically coming on the tail end of the Second American Revolution, and if you wanted to kind of continue the whole Fergus Wyatt thing, play as an older BJ, and whose kids are now like 12 or something.
I don't think that's going to happen though.
BJ is so iconic, unfortunately. I mean, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but like you think that like the American Revolution and then liberating the world, you're suggesting maybe they take 20 years and then have
maybe not 20 years, but I'm just saying at least for this one, like play as an older BJ, where his kids are now can actually speak and have a personality, and then you create something where like literally having a choice between which child to save.
Oh, that's so fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know, bud. I don't know.
Here you go, Anchorman. Kind of dovetailing off of yours. You kind of you skip a few years, right? So the kids are born. They're both like guys or whatever. They're maybe you could have male female twins, or maybe they're both male. And halfway through the game, BJ dies, and then it's skipped 15 years. And one of the twins is now the new BJ, taking up the mantle for his father, trying to take down the Nazis in a similar like Red Dead.
Whichever one you chose to save.
So let's not forget. So if we're gonna go with that idea, let's not forget those flash forward or looking into the future flash things that BJ had in the first game, where there was a barbecue, and he's laying down with Anya, and this is before any of this happened, and he's laying down in a hammock with Anya, and he's wearing an apron. And you can hear children laughing and playing, and he's like, I smell of barbecue, and so I think that is probably how it's going to end. I think the series will end with Anya and BJ in their backyard, surrounded by their children, and it fucking better. I want BJ and Anya to have a happy ending. They are my favorite couple in gaming, and if it does not end with them being happy and in love for the rest of their lives, I will fucking riot.
So you think they do have to jump some years though for the next game? Because this one started immediately after, and then it came like, oh well, he was unconscious for 5 months or whatever, or 3 months.
I think the most likely course of scenario is what Zach suggested. Like the first level or two is focusing on the overarching American Revolution, and then they will. Because this entire game was focused, like each one of these games has a theme, right? Like the theme in the first one, was Europe. It's all Europe. Theme in the second game is America. Like the whole game is America. So it makes sense for the third game to do something else or to go somewhere else. Maybe like Zach suggested, like in the Pacific Theater, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, because we don't know what happened to the Japanese Empire, because they were the allies of the Axis. Well, I mean, we don't know if they were in this world or not, but
there's just so much that they have to touch, whether it's nationally or internationally, right? Like they mention slavery offhandedly in this game. But I would love for them to delve into,
like, go to the Deep South, maybe.
I mean, I just want to I want to understand, and maybe they'll do that in the DLC. Who knows? I want to understand what that system looks like in this alternate history. I mean, there's a ton of stuff they can still do in the United States, but I just mean the Machine Games has said in interviews, when we originally designed this game, we designed it as a trilogy, and so I just think that there's no way they can get through a compelling trilogy without going to the world, and I think the most likely scenario in my mind, and I don't care if I'm wrong or not, would be if anything they do 6 months and it's the end of the second American Revolution, and they're going on to do a revolution. Like, because I think the third game will have them just kicking ass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this game was them still getting their asses kicked for about half of it. I think this will just be the continuation of the Kryzak Circle stomping out what's left.
So I guess my question is: do you guys, and this will be the last one, do you guys even think we'll get a sequel?
Heck yes, that's guaranteed.
Well, I mean, the game has apparently not performed well, and games that don't perform well usually don't get. But then, I mean that's not.
But this is Bethesda. This is Bethesda, man.
It's Bethesda, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm afraid it won't. That to me would be a tragedy if this story just stops here. Like I need resolution to this. And Rand, I don't know, man. Like you've got your finger on the pulse of the industry. Like do you think Wolfenstein 2 will do you think that they'll get a sequel greenlit regardless of the fact the game has not sold well?
I'm kind of worried it won't.
Yeah, so
because I mean, like their other game, Evil Within 2, seemed to not do very well, and so I'm kind of
that series is dead.
I'm kind of very, very worried for the future of Wolfenstein. Maybe they do it on the chance that, hey, here's multiplayer with loot boxes, microtransactions.
Yeah.
Or you know what? I could also see them wrapping it up with like a DLC, like the Old Blood.
Or right, that or I was gonna compare it to Death of the Outsider, but obviously
Death of the Outsider is another. Like I would prefer a full blown sequel, but if it's like a standalone DLC or nothing, then obviously I'll take what we can get.
I mean, thankfully they ended it in a way where the implication, I mean, and they kind of did this with the last game too, where they didn't wrap everything up, but the implication is that they've got the ball rolling in the right direction.
Everything's going to be okay.
Right, yeah, so in 10 years, if this ever ends up coming, it's fine. But obviously, I would say the odds are that they revisit it. The odds of them getting a full-blown sequel is maybe a little bit less likely.
I can see that.
Yeah, because what do you do? I mean, if you're Bethesda, you own Machine Gun Games, right? That's one of their studios. So it's like, if you don't have them doing Wolfenstein, what exactly do you have them doing?
That's a good point.
Do they even fit into your portfolio of studios?
And that is a super talented
Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein 1 didn't sell that great either. But I mean, the only way you actually pushed out a decent amount of units was when they put it on deep sale.
What
$10.
What really killed Wolfenstein 2's sales is what killed Evil Within 2 sales. It's what killed Dishonored 2 sales. It's what killed Prey sales. It's shitty fucking a combination. Well, not so much marketing for Wolfenstein 2 as it is a terrible fucking release window.
Yeah.
It's the same day as Super Mario Odyssey and Assassin's Creed. Good idea.
Yeah, like if it's
the big one.
Yeah.
The big one that's been killing Bethesda lately has been the review copy policy. Because they're not getting in anybody's hands, and therefore there's no conversation about it, except for a couple of reviewers, not reviewers, really just streamers, some big media personality types, but they're not doing any reviews. And this is the kind of game Dishonored 2 should have gotten a shit ton of praise.
Oh, Dishonored 2 was a fucking masterpiece.
It didn't get it until after it came out.
Yeah,
by then it was late.
Well, people point out Doom, they're like, well, Doom didn't get review copies, and I'm like, yeah, but that game also came out in fucking June.
There was nothing else either.
There was nothing else to buy, so yeah, it sold well. Just like Rand said, you released this game on top of fucking Super Mario Odyssey and probably the most anticipated Assassin's Creed game in a decade. So yeah, and then a week and a half, 2 weeks out from Call of Duty. I mean,
3 weeks. I mean, obviously it sold poorly, and Battlefront. There are a million reasons why this game sold poorly. I mean, look, we have some idea based on Black Friday sales and other things how it did in November, but I think it'll be incredibly interesting to see if it gets anywhere near the top 5 of November. But I think if anything, we'll see it 9 or 10.
It'll be down at the bottom. I mean, your top 5 are going to be Call of Duty, Super Mario Odyssey, Assassin's Creed, shit like that, and the last 2, anybody's guess, but
yeah. But like you're saying, I mean, these games have legs, and Bethesda knows how to cut prices when they need to.
It's too bad they don't know how to fucking market.
Agreed. Their marketing is awful.
I'm kind of worried for Bethesda outside of their Elder Scrolls Fallout thing, because it seems like anything they put out that's not Elder Scrolls or Fallout, it's just
bombing.
Which, it's only a matter of time before people catch on about how terrible Fallout is, but...
It's and a lot of it is that immersive, and I hate to say it because it's a genre I love, but the immersive sim genre is just not selling like it used to. And I'm not saying that this is an immersive sim, but just looking at the last year for poor Bethesda, they've released Dishonored 2, Prey, and then Death of the Outsider, all of which underperformed horribly. Obviously, the Evil Within performed pretty poorly.
That was a mega bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, and as is Wolfenstein. So there's
they put Evil Within out to die.
Oh,
absolutely. The 2 weeks 2 weeks before Wolfenstein, no less.
And with
like you cannibalize your own game.
With almost no marketing either, Ivan. Like with
no marketing for Evil Within 2.
Well, remember,
like,
they're only
I was only happy for Evil Within 2 because of my bet with Cal, because I couldn't play it with the next release Bethesda game. And so then they just put it out to die. I was like, I wasn't playing Evil Within anyway, so...
No, they took that game out behind the fucking shed.
Well, I think the only gimmick with that game's release date is that it launched on Friday the 13th. And it's like, okay,
Friday the 13th, the game should have launched that date.
Yeah, but like,
we gotta push that out in June.
That is the only logical reason to release it, and like that's still a shitty reason.
Yeah,
they have any games coming out next year, by the way?
Bethesda?
Like, yeah, I'm just thinking, like, now that we know Machine Gun Games, no, like, I mean,
Elder
I guess
Scrolls 6, believe.
I mean, no, remember, we didn't know Wolfenstein was coming out. I mean, Wolfenstein's first release date was, and showing it at all, was E3, right?
Yeah, I will say that
it was, but it had leaked earlier in the year. Though.
Bethesda has become the one thing Bethesda has done right this generation is they've become one of the only studios to announce their games and release them within a 6 to 7 month period.
Yeah, and it largely. I mean, well, I shouldn't say it largely works. It largely doesn't work. It only worked with Fallout, which
it has to be one of their big titles.
Yeah,
it's got to be like Elder Scrolls. They could give them a month notice, and Elder Scrolls would still sell.
It's like unless they're doing like a DLC like Death of the Outsider for Wolfenstein, you already know what all their studios are doing.
Yep.
You know, it's like, what do they have for next year? I mean, Fallout 5's no, Starfield. Because they still got to do Elder Scrolls 6. Is Elder Scrolls
and
Starfield?
And Arcane is gone. Dude. Arcane is gone for probably 3 or 4 years because they just released 3 games in 12 months.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's Bethesda is. It's so weird because they're a competent publisher. They're a competent developer and they're an okay publisher.
Hey, you got to give Bethesda some credit too. They have supported every system to a ridiculous amount. Most of their games are X enhanced. They're putting more third party support on the Switch than anybody else.
I'm waiting for that Fallout 4 on the Switch.
What if Wolfenstein is saved because of the Switch? Can you imagine that?
Wouldn't that be something else? Rand, can you imagine Rand singing the praises of the Switch because of that?
Okay, but
we got Wolfenstein 3 because they put it on the Switch. What forward thinking?
Did you guys play this game on vanilla Xbox One before the X came out?
I couldn't wait. I waited for all the other games for the X, but I had to play Wolfenstein.
Yeah, and I wanted to wait, but I couldn't either. And this game looked very bad. I mean, pretty well. Yeah, no, it looked very bad.
It was very fuzzy
on the vanilla
engine.
And the frame rate was terrible. I can't imagine the sacrifice you're gonna do to get this game to run in handheld.
I'm still not convinced it's actually going to make it there. But then again, they got Doom on it, which is nothing short of fucking necromancy.
You know, the worst thing about that game was when you would hold X to end a level, and it would just
it'd stutter forever.
Until it started.
Yep. It was weird.
The one biggest complaint I had about gameplay is they used the whole, you're in a new area, here's 2 commanders, rinse, repeat the entire game. And I was like,
that's true.
I'm so bored of that mechanic.
No, like, honestly, I'm pretty comfortable saying this. I think the gameplay is the worst part of Wolfenstein 2.
No, the game. So the first-person gameplay in Wolfenstein 2 is not anywhere near as good as the New Order was. Let's just get that. Let's just call it what it is. You play Wolf. I mean, it's competent, but that's where it stops.
I definitely felt like Wolfenstein 1 was oriented so you could really play stealth or running gun. But this one is definitely leaning way more towards running gun.
They really want you to bust. They really want you to kick the
They also got id. It actually had a lot more influence on this one. You see the influence of Doom on it.
By the way, I also want to point out, I don't think anybody on PlayStation Network has platinumed the game because I don't think anybody's been able to beat Mind Leben difficulty.
5 people have it on True Achievements on Xbox. So
5 people.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't blame them. Like, I originally was playing this on medium. I think I've beaten the New Order on the 2nd to hardest difficulty. I beat that over the summer. I think it was 2nd to highest. And it was okay. I mean, it was tough, but it was okay. But I played this game on medium, and I had to lower it to, not easy, but there's, like, a weird tier between easy and medium. And I had to lower it probably 4 hours and, like, right after the New York level just to make it playable for me.
I mean, can you imagine?
Very hard game. But
can you imagine?
Go ahead.
No. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, bud.
I just mean, I think what made this bad is that enemy hit detection is very, very, very weak.
Terrible.
But even worse than that is BJ has no indicator that he's taking damage until you're dead.
Yes.
Like, just have the screen shake a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, in the first one, the screen would turn red. It would turn red when you were getting shot.
Yeah.
In this one, there's nothing.
It's
I don't know how many times I'd have
You just
like
tank it
100
like a
100
man.
armor, 100 health, get into a fight, and it's like
gone.
no armor,
Gone.
50 health, and I'm like, what the heck happened?
I don't
after that?
understand why
You go through this stuff real quick.
Do you know how?
I mean,
presumably, you would think it would be quite easy to patch in a screen shake, a little bit of red, and just a sound when you're taking damage. Like, how hard is that?
Yeah, at least like ow,
Literally any indication.
So
Plus,
like
fighting the big, huge enemies, like you fought a lot more of the mechanized enemies in this game than the previous one, and I don't really think that was a lot of fun. I
don't like the mechanized enemies. I didn't like, and like, can you imagine playing that courtroom level on Mein Leben difficulty where if you die once the whole thing's over? Like, I mean, can you imagine that? Like, I can't even fucking fathom that.
That takes some balls. Not only that, but you can't skip any cutscenes, so it's like watch them all again over and over. It's like, oh man.
No, and
not worth
it. Especially in the latter parts of the game, like the Ausmerzer at the end was the most egregious example of where they're like, no, you're not fucking stealthing your way through this. Like you are going in guns blazing, and I didn't lower the difficulty because I wanted the trophy. But there were a few times in the court. It took me an hour and a half to beat the courthouse because I just couldn't fucking do it, and I had to stand up. I got so heated, I had to stand up and walk away for about 30 minutes. I was I can't.
This isn't a joke. Is the New York section the first time you go there, right when you're going to meet Grace, and my girlfriend's watching me play. She doesn't like the gameplay of that game, but she likes the cutscenes. And I looked at her at one point because I kept hitting a wall where I kept dying, and I was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe they fucked up this game. Like, I use that exact line. I can't believe they fucked up this game. Like, the gameplay of this game is not great, honestly. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree. It's fine. It is what it is, and it's fine.
But I mean, and like that shouldn't, like, if somebody's like, oh, I mean, obviously, I don't think any of the handful of people here who might still be watching this are hurt people who haven't bought it yet. It wouldn't stop me from suggesting the game to a friend. I mean, I would say play it on an easy difficulty. Play it on an easy difficulty.
Rand's game of the year, despite all that.
Yeah, no, taking all the dialogue, taking all the narrative stuff, play it on like an easy difficulty if you don't care about achievements, and just get through it.
That's what I'm doing on my second playthrough. Like on my second playthrough, I put it on easy. And I'm just going through and having a fucking Nazi killing thing. And honestly, I wish I had done this the first time.
Yep.
Yo, can we talk really, really fast about how horrible the kill board is, and like replaying that stuff to just like pad out like the game time? It's like
I gave it up halfway through. I was like, why am I doing this?
I did 2 of them. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, what am I will say, going back to your house as set up as a movie was kind of cool.
I actually finished the kill board because there's a special mission at the end that is a level that's nowhere else in the game.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
I wrote about it a while ago, but I didn't want to get into spoilers because that would suck. But there is a sequence in it is unlike any other thing in the game. In fact, okay, very light spoilers. Isn't a story thing. Very light spoiler. You are in a bunker. It's pitch black, and they cut the field of view into about half of the flashlight, and you're lurking in the dark. And there are the enemies that stay in the dark, like the robots that light up. And it's a wonder. It's so.
That sounds like a fucking horror game.
It's really good. It's really tense. But if you feel like going back through, it's worth it because it's a really interesting level.
I don't know. I'm with Rand. Like it was the same shit you were doing during the campaign, and like Rand said, I was like, I've done this enough. Like I made it through half of them or a couple. I was like, no.
Like that, it was like the same levels. Like I just cleared out this level and killed everybody here, and now they're all back with the commander, and it's like I don't got time for this, man.
I liked it because there were hidden. And we didn't talk about this at all because it's not super huge. But there are a ton of hidden notes in that section.
Yes.
And those are things I really like. One of the things that you can find actually in the level you're talking about, the one where you go back to the house or the movie set that's supposed to look like your house, one of them is the script. And in the script, there's a line written where you're supposed to be Terror Billy. And like they're describing what he's supposed to look like. And they describe him as having shit on his hands and on his face. Like, because they're just trying to make him look like an idiot. And like just awesome. Like the way it's written is like, ridiculous propaganda crap.
Well, that's because you got to remember Hitler wrote the script,
right?
So yeah,
right. And he's such a fake artist. But no, it's they can be tedious, but the last level unlock is very good.
Well, I think we should go ahead and wrap it up here.
Yeah.
We're
almost 2 hours.
Yeah, and I know Anchorman's got to get going.
Yep.
But guys, Wolfenstein 2, it's just like gameplay issues aside, from a narrative standpoint, just like the breath of fresh air that I needed this year. And I mean, and like I said, like if you haven't played it, I mean, don't let that scare you away. Like I said, it is Rand's game of the year. And just a wow, what a game. And I thank you for talking. Like I've been dying to talk about this fucking game for like a month and a half now.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm glad we got to sit down and hash this out. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you all for participating and joining me. Anchor and Rand, it's always a pleasure to have you guys on, man. And,
always a pleasure to be on.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And Rand, you got to get me on the Xbox too, man.
What?
I said you got to bring me on the Xbox too.
The Xbox 2. Well, it's called 2 for a reason, John.
Well, you can have me fill in for Jez one day, man.
Maybe.
Well, there are only 2 Xbox guys on there, so I guess
that's true.
Okay, 2.5.
2 point, yeah, that's something like that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys, and don't forget to catch us next week on SDGC at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. And until then, take care of each other and be good. See you guys later.